Coming up on this episode, Jonathan Kuminga makes an explosive return as the Warriors get a comfortable win over the Jazz at Chase Center on Sunday, plus a look ahead to the pivotal Lakers matchup tomorrow that could decide the fate of both teams' seasons. Yes, welcome back to the Golden State with Mates podcast, a day after the Warriors got a comfortable 118-110 victory over the Utah Jazz back home at Chase Center. Of course, no NBA games on today, which is a little disappointing, but of course we've got the NCAA championship where, I won't lie, I know very, very little about college basketball. In fact, I don't follow it at all. Of course, there's a heap of players that I'll be following for years once they make it to the professional level at the NBA, but at college level, I don't follow it too much. I know it's a huge thing for those of you over in America. The build-up has been big. It's going to be a massive event. So enjoy for all of you that are maybe going there or are involved in it in some way or are just watching it, which, again, I know very little about, but I will sit down and watch this championship. I think it's starting in 11 a.m. my time, so about 3 hours from now. Let's reflect, though, yesterday on the Warriors' 8-point victory where it was fine. It was a win, and that's all that was needed. But against the Jazz team, I mean, that was the very minimum, wasn't it? Like, you're not going to lose to that Utah team with the outs they had. No Larry Markkinen, no John Collins, Walker Kessler at the 5, a couple other players there they were missing. I mean, it was really Colin Sexton, Keontae George, a couple of their younger players who were on show. But for a young team, they've, as I said on last episode, clearly packed their season in and are just looking forward to next season now. So for a Warrior team, yes, without Stephen Curry, it was always going to be a comfortable matchup so long as they at least arrived at Chase Center. And I mean, they took a little bit to get into it. They fell down 10-6 in the first quarter, which forced an angry Steve Kerr to take a timeout. But from there, kind of normal programming resumed and the Warriors put up 41 points in the first quarter, led by Klay Thompson in the first half, who had 25 points on 9 of 14 shooting from the floor. Classic Klay Thompson flamethrower. Yes, he's had a disappointing season, a little bit, obviously, including that move to the bench back just before the All-Star break. But I've said it before and I'll say it again. There is no one who can light up an NBA floor from beyond the arc like Klay Thompson can. And even at this point of his career, 34 years of age, where he's probably, I mean, you know, his first injury came 5 years ago, so you could say he's 5 years removed from his absolute prime in the 2019 NBA Finals. And yet he still has these moments where he can go off and do stuff that very few, if any, players in the NBA can in terms of the three-point shooting. And yes, you can say, oh, it came against Utah. It's not much to write home about. I actually think, like, when he's in one of those moods like he was yesterday in the first half, it doesn't matter who's out. It doesn't matter who the opposition is. It doesn't matter who's defending. He can just, you know, get shots off and it's just buckets every time. And so it's always, as you know, Klay Thompson being my favorite player, it's always a joy to watch him play like he did in the first half yesterday. A little bit quieter in the second half, 7 points, 2 of 8 shooting, I think it was. So he finished with a game-high 32 on 12 of 23 shooting. Still a really good game, but that first half was unbelievable. Helped the Warriors get out to a 23-point lead. Jazz cut it back down. I think it was 14 at halftime. And then the second half, to me, was really going through the motions kind of thing. I think the Warriors weren't overly impressive. The Jazz fought hard, but the Golden State lead was never really under any kind of threat. And I think that 8-point margin at the end was probably the closest Utah got it to. That probably made it look a bit better for them than what it actually was. The Warriors were able to sit their guys over the final 3 or 4 minutes of the game there. So a comfortable enough win, but not a perfect one by any stretch. I thought their defense was probably as bad as I've seen it over the last 6 or 7 games. Some of the open threes they were allowing to Johnny Juzang, who went, 7 of 8 from three-point range. He had a flamethrower going too. But some of the defensive kind of closeouts on him, the Moody closeout where he just ran into him was just weird. So, yeah, I thought the Warrior defense wasn't great. To give up 110 points to that Jazz team is a little bit disappointing, but maybe there was an inkling of, hey, we're not going to take this team as seriously as what we perhaps would other teams, and therefore the defensive intensity wasn't quite there. And, of course, Draymond Green was limited to just 21 minutes as well. they kind of wanted to manage and rest him through it as well. And obviously Steph was out. So a good win, a comfortable win, not overly impressive. The biggest takeaway here, because against the Utah team late in the season like this, with the condition and the state they're in, taking too much away from the game is fraught with danger. But the Warriors can certainly take away the return of Jonathan Kuminga, which was mightily impressive. Of course, he'd missed 6 straight games. With that knee tendonitis issue, had become a bit of a growing concern for Warrior fans, and all those concerns were kind of laid to rest yesterday once he entered the game. Played about 27 minutes, had 21 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 9 of 11 shooting, and showed no ill effects from that knee issue whatsoever. And I think, on reflection now, I know it's only one game, but we can look at it as, yes, I and other fans were getting concerned about how long JK was taking off here in terms of this knee issue. But I think from a franchise perspective, you've still got a young player here who's 21 years old. You don't want to rush him back by any means. And it means taking a few more games off and then him being able to come back in a way that he did yesterday, then I think that's clearly the best course of action. And I don't think me or anyone else should be, sitting here talking about how Rick Celebrini should be doing his job kind of thing, as, looking after Warrior players. So it's an impressive return from JK. Had all his, athletic explosiveness going to the rim on a few occasions, had a couple alley-oop dunks. So a fantastic performance from him. However, after the game, of course, we had confirmation from Steve Kerr that he will continue to start Trayce Jackson-Davis over Jonathan Kuminga in the starting lineup. So it seems like, as I spoke about last episode, it seems like the Warriors will continue going forward with a Steph, Klay, Wiggs, Dre, and TJD starting 5. This is what Steve said after the game. He said, we want to keep starting Draymond and Trayce for defensive reasons. We really felt good about JK starting for about 30 straight games, but given what's happened over the last couple of weeks, I want to keep starting Trayce. Now, in JK's from JK's perspective, he kind of concurred with those comments, given that the Warriors had gone 5-1 in the 6 games he missed. And of course, as I again spoke about in last episode, you're going to be not overly willing to change things up when you've had so much success over the last fortnight. And JK said, everything is moving well. Why would you want to go away from what's moving well? We're just going to stick with what's going to help us win and just keep winning games. So he obviously, publicly is saying all the right things in terms of being willing to come off the bench again. But I think privately, again, I don't want to speculate too much, but the reality is, you've got a third-year player, 7th overall pick, who before injury started 29 straight games, was really, really good, at times looked like the Warriors' second-best player, and he comes back and now, he's coming off the bench again. And I think, from his perspective, there has to be a thought that, what are we doing here? I deserve a starting role. I've got a potential contract extension coming in the offseason, which is now going to complicate matters on both sides, because you don't want the Warriors lowballing him in any way because they see him as not a certain starter going into next season. But also, from the franchise's perspective, you've got to understand that, hey, we just paid Jordan Poole 4 years, $128 million. To be a 6-man, we didn't even start that contract, and we saw that the Warriors didn't want to go ahead with that and traded him immediately for Chris Paul even before the deal started. And so that's going to be the kind of plot that will go forward here with JK, and it's why it's so important, not just in the short term here with his return, because I think we can all understand. We can all understand that, JK's had 6 games out. The Warriors have been really good. I think JK understands that, hey, this is going to be the starting lineup over the remainder of the season. But then what happens? What happens moving forward? And I think it's going to be a huge talking point over the offseason with what happens with Jonathan Kuminga. Because if you're not willing to say, yeah, you're a certain starter, and you're not willing to give him a contract extension, then you might as well try and get value out of him in a trade. And that's being brutally honest. And I didn't think I'd be saying that a few weeks ago, given how impressive he's been over the last couple of months. But as impressive as he has been, that's also driven his value up, where other teams, rival teams, are going to be interested in acquiring him if he does become available on the trade market where, the Warriors going back to the February trade deadline essentially said that he was untouchable. Well, if you've got an untouchable piece, then that untouchable piece better be a starter, because I've never heard of a bench piece that's untouchable. I don't know. Maybe Manu Ginobili for the Spurs back in. I don't know. I've never heard of an untouchable piece that is also a bench player. And so the Warriors are going to have decisions to make there. But obviously, we'll just get through the remainder of the season. I think JK is still going to have a huge role, obviously, regardless. He still, played 27 minutes yesterday. I'm a little bit concerned about Draymond's back issues. To be fair, he left the game in the third quarter yesterday. Had some wrapping around his back, and clearly the Warriors didn't want to put him back out there at all. And I think they made the decision fairly quickly that we're not going to put him back out there. And the game did, in fairness, over the fourth quarter, the Jazz brought it back to 10-12 a couple of times, and you thought maybe in another situation Draymond would go back out there. But there's some concerns for his back, I think, there. And as a result, JK is going to have a big role here over the final 4 games, at least the regular season. And Steve even hinted at that yesterday, before the game, where he spoke about how the Warriors are kind of almost locked into 10th in the West right now, and therefore there might be the opportunity to rest some guys or manage some guys through the last 4 games. And of course, we saw Steph rest yesterday and Draymond play 21 minutes. But the other thing was we saw different lineups yesterday with Steph out, given that Steve, early second quarter it was, where he was running a Pods, Moody, Geese Santos, JK, TJD lineup, where I can promise you in any kind of semblance of an important game against any reasonable opposition, he's definitely not running that kind of lineup. So there will be kind of a different looking Warrior lineup potentially, not necessarily next game against the Lakers, but maybe the final 3 games, obviously depending day by day on what happens with the results and whether the Warriors can push up the standings, which we'll look at that now, because the Warriors do play the Lakers tomorrow at Crypto.com Arena. Lakers did them a favor yesterday, losing to the Timberwolves 127-117. This is going to be a huge matchup. More concerning, though, yesterday for the Lakers was an injury to Anthony Davis, who kind of re-aggravated an eye injury that he actually suffered the last time the Warriors played the Lakers last month, where I think he got poked in the eye or something from Trace Jackson Davis. Yesterday, he gets a vicious putback dunk at the end of the first quarter, but in the meantime also gets hit by Kyle Anderson. No foul call, but it did force AD back to the locker room, where he did not return, which was obviously a big difference in the game in the end, given that the Lakers were already without LeBron James, who was out with flu-like symptoms. So there's certainly going to be sweating on the fitness of AD. I'm sure that LeBron will be fine. I'm sure he'll come out and play tomorrow, because the Lakers do need to win this game against the Warriors. This is a pivotal matchup. The Warriors are a game and a half behind the Lakers in the 10th seed, the Lakers 9th, and then still two games behind the Kings in 8th. This really faces up as a really great matchup, though, because both teams have been in some incredible form over the last 10 or 11 games. If you look over the last 11, the Lakers have won 9 of their games, and if you just look at the defensive, offensive, and net rating of both teams, so the Lakers over the last 11 games, 6 in defense, the Warriors are 7th, Dubs are 7th in offense, the Lakers are 9th, and then overall net rating, the Warriors are 5th and the Lakers are 8th. So this is a game with both teams in perhaps their best form of the season. And as a result, we should get a really, really good matchup where both teams are playing for a lot. Because if you look at what the Warriors can do here I don't even know if they want to finish 9th. Like, they literally might want to finish 10th and have a road playing game so they don't have to play at home, given their contrast in records between home and road this season, where they've been much better on the road for some odd reason. But if you look at what the Warriors can do here, if they do beat the Lakers tomorrow, then win their final 3 games, which they finish with the Trailblazers, the Pelicans, and the Jazz, you would have thought that Portland and Utah would be pretty much guaranteed wins. So it's really they just have to beat the Pelicans almost, should they beat the Lakers tomorrow. And then if the Lakers can drop one of their last 2 games where they play the Pelicans, I think would be their best chance or the Warriors' best chance of the Lakers losing. If that can happen, then the Warriors would finish a game ahead of the Lakers, obviously, and therefore finish ninth. And they could even finish eighth if the Kings lose 3 of their last 4. They've got the Thunder, Pels, Suns, and Trailblazers. So they would need basically the Thunder, Pels, and Suns to all beat the Kings, which is possible. Right? So there's still an inkling of the Warriors being able to get the 8th seed, but there might come a time, game 81, 82, where that's no longer possible, and you might see guys rest over the last couple of games before that play-in tournament matchup. The Kings, they beat the Nets yesterday very comfortably, so they're, again, 3 of the last 4, they need to lose for the Warriors' perspective. We'll wait and see. It's funny how the Pelicans kind of are all entwined in this, given the Pelicans play the Warriors, the Lakers, and the Kings, and then are still obviously trying to get a top 6 seeding themselves, so they've got plenty to play for. So the Warriors kind of need to beat the Pels, and then the Pels need to do the Warriors a favor by beating the Lakers and Kings. It's all very interesting, but that's the beauty of an 82-game season where it comes down to the final few games here. Anyway, we'll finish it up there. Not too much to be taken away from the win over the Jazz, aside from an impressive return from JK. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that would be greatly appreciated. You can follow me at POK252, that's POK252 on Twitter/X. You can follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Enjoy the NCAA Championship if you are sitting down to watch it now in 2.5 hours' time. Other than that, guys, see you on the next episode and have a great week ahead.